Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a cloud solutions architect specializing in management technologies. Today's discussion will be focused on Windows and specifically how to troubleshoot with an Intune enrolled device. So one of the very common questions that comes up are what are the troubleshooting options as we approach managing devices with Intune? For those that come from a configuration manager background, we're accustomed to logs and being able to see every little detail of what's going on. And in Intune, we don't have logs. I'll put an asterisk there for a minute and come back to that in a minute because we do have some, but not like we do in Configuration Manager. Instead, we have plenty of other troubleshooting options. They're just in different places, and they're also going to be based on the thing that we're trying to do. So I want to walk you through. I'm certainly not going to show you everything. This will be a Windows-focused session. There will be a devices-focused session that partners with this, right? And so I just want to dig through some of these things and kind of give you an idea to jumpstart as you're trying to get into troubleshooting. So here's what we're going to do in this session. First, want to split up the different components of managing a Windows device. So MDM, IME, which stands for Intune Management Extension, and then the MMPC, Microsoft Management Platform Cloud. We'll talk about that a little bit. Then I want to just touch a few other options, the audit logs we have, troubleshooting, security, tab, the registry, some advanced diagnostics type stuff. And then we'll have just a few examples that go a little bit beyond that, some that use the audit logs. I think I might have that in there twice. Anyway, and then we will be done. And certainly not exhaustive again, but intended to just give you an idea of how to go through and do some of these things. So let's get started. And this is just an overview slide where I try to bring in all of the devices that can be managed with Intune and then split them out accordingly. So our focus is Windows right now. And so right across the top, we have MDM. That's supposed to be a D. I don't know what happened there. That's supposed to be a D, but on my screen, it looks like it doesn't have a completed line. Don't know if that's just my screen, but MDM. Right? And so all of the platforms that we manage will be with MDM. Linux, I don't know, probably with MDM. I haven't actually looked at that because it's not one that is common yet to manage, but certainly all of the others have a built-in MDM stack. And that's what we leverage to manage those operating systems, right? Majority-wise. Some detail will come about that here, right? As we talk about also on a Windows device, note the green, that we have something called the Intune Management Extension, right? So that is an additional piece that is placed on a Windows device. It's an automatic thing. You don't need to do anything about it except know that it's there, right? So the third piece is the Microsoft Management Platform Cloud, right? So we'll talk more about these as we get in, but I want to share those with you because when you are doing something on a Windows-based device, you need to know where it is specifically that action is going to be implemented. So pick some rough numbers, 80% of the things that we do in Intune are going to be delivered by MDM. Again, speaking on Windows devices. Another roughly 15% of what we do in Intune will be delivered by the Intune Management Extension. And then right now, about 5% of what we do will be delivered with MMPC. Right? Now, this is an evolving area. We'll talk more about it as we get to each one of these, but that's true for Windows, right? Also true for Mac OS, MDM managed. But just like you have an Intune Management Extension for Windows, you have an Intune Management Agent for Mac OS, right? And you may be wondering, well, I thought everything went through MDM. I thought that Intune was an agentless a solution that did not require an agent to do management. Well, that's mostly true, right? But there are things that customers want to be able to do that the MDM engine built into the OS on the Windows and Mac side, it's not capable of doing those things. So on the Windows side, examples of that would be Win32 app deployment. That's going to be closest to application deployment in Configuration Manager. Also delivering PowerShell scripts, right, through remediations and such. That's something the MDM engine can't do. And so we have the management agent, management extension that we can do that with. So we'll talk more about that when we get to those pages in a minute. And then other areas, app deployment and protection policy is another area that surrounds this. Co-management, certainly, enrollment, there's stuff specific to that. Device management, company portal, yada, 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 configurations, right on we go. This is the world that we're talking about whenever we think about troubleshooting in Intune, right? And again, the experience will be different depending on the device type you're using. So the focus of this session, again, Windows. All right, so MDM. Actually, before I even get into that, let me back up for a minute, because I'm going to focus. Sorry, pause. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. All right, so MDM, the area where the vast majority of things are available is MDM, right? About 80%, again, just guessing at that number of stuff delivered. And so we want to be able to see how things are rolling whenever we're troubleshooting, right? Are things getting there that we intend to get there, right? One thing that I will just tell you here is the results that come back from Intune managed devices come back to the portal fairly quickly, but they're not as quick as sometimes we would like them to be, right? There's various reasons for that, and certainly feedback is been given to the product team on that, and we're always looking at ways to make things more efficient. But I say that to simply say, just because you don't see something increase in a timely way in the portal does not mean that something has not been done on the managed device. Very often, your configurations are going to be in place that you configure on a device very quickly, within minutes, a lot of the times, certainly within the hour, a lot of the times, right? And be aware. This is also just kind of a dotted line tangent area that I kind of thought about putting this loosely in combination in this session, decided not to. But one thing that really is important to understand the timeliness and the way configs flow down and kind of expectations in that area is to understand how synchronization works in Intune, right? And you may think and you might, but it's very different than what you might think, right? A little tidbit, if you go onto a managed device, here, let me just do it for you. If you go to a managed device, go to settings, this is a very common thing on a Windows device, go to accounts, and then click on Access Worker School, and then you go in here and find Intune. Okay, so here, and then click Info, keep going. Right, here's a way to synchronize the device. And you can press Sync, right? You can do it other areas too, Company Portal and the Intune Portal, whatever. But here's the deal. That sync only works for MDM, nothing else. So we have two other components. We have Intune Management Extension. We have MMPC, right? Just to call out, that sync is only for MDM. So you might deploy a Win32 app and go hit sync over and over and over again, and nothing happens, and you wonder why. It's because it's not using MDM for Win32 apps. Enough about that. I just want to mention that because I do have a session focused on synchronization, and it's out there on my YouTube channel. Called Sync the Details, I believe is what it is, where I spend a lot of time talking about sync in Windows specifically, right? There's a bit more on the devices there too, but mainly focused on Windows because largely, not totally, it's the same process for devices, right? Anyway, all right, pulling the tangent back. So if we deploy something, if we deliver a configuration to a device, from Intune, and we're looking for the MDM channel, then the way to see what's actually going on is not logs, may not be logs. I'll explain that more in a minute, right? Could be, depending, but is to look through Event Viewer. This is a good place to start, right? For sure. And so we will log all of our stuff under Applications and Services, and that takes forever to open. I don't know why. A Microsoft Windows, and then Device Enrollment Manager, Device Enterprise Diagnostics, right? Device Management Enterprise Diagnostics. And there's 5 event logs here. There's one that specifically tracks the synchronization. There's an operational, there's an enrollment, there's autopilot, there's admin, right? So know where to look, and there's going to be entries in each one. We'll come back to it and look at this for a couple of different topics here in a minute, but certainly information in here. So I'll just click on sync, right? And so one thing I can just quickly show you is 209, right? So, okay, I found a 209. The event 209 is unique to describe whether syncs are successful or not, right? So usually you're going to see them be successful. You might see, here, let me filter it better so I can just line them up. Filter current log, 209, 209. Right, and so these are all the 209. So if you go up and down, you will, oops, dang it. You will just see the 209s, and I messed that up. Okay, make sure, good. So as I scroll up and down, you will see the operation completed successfully. But then down here, one of them, I think, you will see not completed successfully, right? Okay, there we go. So this actually used to be an error. But we realized in discussions with the product team, no, this really isn't an error. This is basically just the MDM managed device talking back and forth to the MDM service. And there's some details there, not going to go into them here, right? But you can see what's going on. If there are true errors in the MDM sync process, you'll see it. You can confirm how often synchronizations are happening, right? There have been occasions where synchronizations did not happen. Why? Because we need access to the endpoints on the network to be able to get to Intune to complete communication, right? Typically, you have these if you've enrolled successfully, but sometimes things change on the networking side. Good to be able to see what's going on, right? That's one example. Here's enrollment stuff. So if you're having trouble, enrolling, whatever, you can get some information, some really good detail. Here's, admin stuff. So you might see events like this that will tell you, hey, here's the configuration ID. Now, this is not easily always readable. You can always interpret some of these values and figure out where they are, but you can see this is a policy, a CSP policy. It's going to be the command is going to be clear first phase of delete or whatever, and then this is something to be aware of. Right? I'm not going to go into detail on this, but that string format is known as the OMA URI kind of config. It is the configuration path in the operating system down to the subcomponents where you need to introduce a config. This is the raw way that Intune addresses configuring a device. In the UI, it's a lot more beautiful than that, right? A very user-friendly look about clicking a button here, there, whatever, but all of that is ultimately translated down to, for the MDM, down to OMA URI settings and delivered in this format, right? That's why there is a custom option in Intune. When you go into Intune, I'll show you, I wasn't going to, but when we go into Intune and look, right, we have all of these, well, come on, I say we do. Open. Machine acts crazy sometimes. Okay, there we go. So we have all of these configuration options under devices, under config, just to stay where we want to be under configuration here, right? Okay, and then I can go create a new policy, and by platform, I'll choose Windows, blah, 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 policy type. I'll just use templates for illustration purposes here. You're going to see configuration templates, right? And you can usually use these templates to at least figure out the area in which you want to do configuration, right? These are the user-friendly ones, but notice this is custom, right? So if there is a setting that you need to configure and there's not yet a UI option to do it, but Windows supports it, then you could use custom to take care of it. And when you hit custom, you're going to be asked for detail about it. And this is where I'm just going to stop because there's too much to go into here. But one of the things you're going to be asked for is OMA URI. And this is where that string format that I showed you, ./vendor, blah, 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 would come into play. This is how you would address that particular component, right? A lot more about that we could talk about, kind of not the point of this discussion, but just FYI, right? We can continue down. You can see different things. I mean, we're going through the MDM policy manager, looking at the details, blah, 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 right? And so sift through this log. There's a lot of detail in this log that will help you be able to troubleshoot different things, right? So that's all I'll say. There's more we'll get to on the MDM side in a minute, but that's all I'll say for that. So let's shift. IME, Intune Management Extension. For those that like logs, we've got logs for you, right? So back on my machine. So if you deliver something that is managed by the Intune Management Extension, then you can access those the logs for that and see what's going on, right? So under Program Data, and then Microsoft, come on, and then Intune Management Extension, we have logs, right? So these are not obviously the same names or whatever of the logs in CM, but they are pretty understandable what log describes what, and will be very familiar. You can use CM Trace from Configuration Manager to look at these logs. And so would be not a bad idea to sift through here. If you're troubleshooting something with the Intune Management Extension, this is where you would look first to go find some information, right? Probably first on the device. All right. Little asterisk, I'm going to come back to one more thing about Intune Management Extension in a minute, but I'll move on from here. The last one, MMPC, is a relatively new addition for Intune, right? It uses a different engine to be able to deliver detail to your device, right? It uses a new service in Windows called the declarative config service. It's not an Intune service, but it's a way to get configuration information to the device very quickly, right? So right now, there are just a few components that use MMPC. Those components would be Endpoint Privilege Management uses MMPC. Also, the new Enhanced Device Inventory for Windows uses MMPC. And MMPC, again, Windows only. Right, okay. Declarative config, certainly not Windows only, but the MMPC service is. And so the idea of MMPC is that you need to be able to deliver configurations very quickly. That is true of endpoint privilege management for sure. And there's other places where we're going to be adding support for MMPC, right? Think of MMPC as the next generation of being able to deliver configurations to the device, right? MDM is still here. Intune Management Extension is still here, though reading the tea leaves, expect some things to start to shift for MMPC. I don't know when, I don't know if, I don't know, really any more detail than that, but it's such an efficient delivery engine that almost certainly you will see things grow in the MMPC space and maybe BT prioritized in the MDM space, as an example. I heard at one point that for an MDM delivery to be fully baked on a device, it takes about 12 round trips to the server, maybe, if I'm here remembering that right. And for MMPC, it's maybe 3 round trips to the server. So definitely efficiency, right? The other thing about declarative config is that you can make sure that that configuration persists on a device, even if the device is not connected to the network, right? There can be possibly some things that you would configure in Intune, and then depending on the rights of the user on the device, they could go and set that back to something they want. Well, and plan to leave their device disconnected from the network so Intune can't correct that configuration. Well, with MMPC, it doesn't matter whether the device is connected, not connected. It has the configuration details stored on it. It knows how to implement it. It will just set it right back the way it was supposed to be, right? And declarative config stuff does more than that for sure. But to give an illustration of how we use it in Intune, this is kind of the pathway. In Intune, you will deliver a configuration. Portions of that configuration will come down through MDM, but portions will be delivered to the MMPC service that then comes down to the device, right, and gets implemented. So high-level view, this is a link if you want to see more about it, right? But then on this diagram, we start to see maybe what a document looks like. So this particular document is from enabling the enhanced inventory service on a device. And so you can read through this and see some of the areas in which we're doing that. We see enhanced inventory here, right? And there's a lot more that you can look at if you need to see what we're doing. And this is the kind of document that we persist on the device, right? So, and then here's the registry. So let me just pop open the registry on mine and give you an example here. All right, come on. Okay, so declared configuration is right here. So local machine software Microsoft declared configuration, and then we'll go into host OS, and we'll go into config and enrollments and keep drilling down because we have to, and keep going. And finally, we get to a series of configurations. Now, some of these are a bit bulkier than others, and I'm not going to drive into them. They'll look a little bit different too. But this top one, for example, if I look at the cooked versus raw, which that cracks me up, and then CSP1, I'll have a bunch of different settings that come in here, right? And as I click through the settings, I can see different detail about what's configured on the device, and I'm keeping an eye on the value key, right? And I'm scrolling down, and then you see, hey, successful operation. And then the very next one will tell you, this is actually the Microsoft Device Inventory agent in this config that was delivered through the declarative config service, right? And then if I drill down a little bit more, I'll find, I think, the Windows Store one in a minute. That's not the one I want. I think about 3 down. Maybe it's here. That's not the one I want. Let's see. Maybe it's up here. Anyway, you can explore this at your leisure, right? Come on. Where's the Windows Store one? No. All right. Hang on. Let's see. All right. Sorry. I am going to find this. That's not the one I want. Okay. It's in here somewhere, I promise. No. All right, let's see. Device management. Okay, where is it? I'm looking for this format, URI. So let me try here. Things may have changed. Nope. Okay, it's going to be the last one that I try. I saw it yesterday. CSP1. Okay. Well, it's going to make a liar of me. It's not in here, or at least I'm not clicking down to it. But there's another one in here. At least there was yesterday when I played with this for Windows Store, right? Anyway, you can click through it here and play around and figure out and all of that, right? So this is another way to be able to see the information, right? Okay, and then just to highlight, this is a service, declared configuration service that runs on a Windows device. So you can start and stop that service, do whatever you need to, right? But usually you just don't have to mess with it, right? For MMPC, for example, there's no real worry about synchronization like you might have with MDM and Intune Management Extension, in fact, right? It just happens, right? It's very fast, very quick delivery of configs down to devices, right? So, okay. Information there. All right, now, those are the 3 core components. What about other ways that we can actually go through and look at something? Like maybe there's someone that somehow a device got retired or wiped or something like that, right? The audit logs will actually tell us what happened or who did it, right? Or whatever, right? So let's go into the Intune. Come on. It bugs me when it does this. You go into the Intune portal and then go to tenant administration, and we will leave that. That's fine. And then we'll go down to audit logs. Now, I don't have anything of interest on mine, but you would if you have this enabled, right? And if you have rights to see it. And so we would show you if someone initiates certain actions, when it was done, who did it, et cetera, right? So good for visibility as to something that might have happened by accident, on purpose, whatever, right? We'll give you insight there. If in the case of like wiping or retiring a device, if there is not an entry in the audit log for that, then almost certainly that means the user initiated the action themselves, right? FYI. So that's one. Another in the other category or more options would be troubleshooting plus support. All right, so let's go back to the Intune portal here. And so if you're having a user that has a device that has a problem, then you can get more detailed information from troubleshooting plus support as soon as it comes up by entering that user's name. All right, so that's me. And so with that, I can see a few things. I can, if I know the device, filter by the device type. This tells me the user status, that the user is licensed, the account's enabled, which is important. Here, I kind of break down the details by category, right? And then I can see how many devices that this user owns. I can see the groups and the policies that are applied to me, the user. Whatever. I can see app protection policy stuff. I can go into enrollment restrictions and see that. Maybe the device isn't enrolling because there's a restriction that says, hey, you can't enroll a BYOD device, but the user's trying to do that and it fails, right? I can go into diagnostics there as well and see some information about the device and so forth, right? I'm going to come back to this. Well, heck, I'll go ahead and do it. I'm here. Another interesting thing that you can do is diagnostics, device diagnostics. So if you're, this is a Windows device thing. If you're trying to diagnose a problem on a Windows device, it may not be the easiest thing to go and collect the files yourself. You may not know what all files to collect, right? But we have the ability to trigger a device diagnostics run on the device, which will go scoop up information from that device that's relevant and bring it in, right? So you can actually look at it. So in my case, I've already done it on this device. So I have one entry that I can download from, right? And I'll show you that in a minute, but let me back up for a minute and just show you what I'm talking about in terms of triggering a device diagnostics. And by the way, here's another little piece that's interesting. So if you're trying to get through a scenario, you can use guided scenarios and take you through how to do certain things, which is very helpful. That's not troubleshooting, but saw it, so I thought I would mention it. Okay, so back to your devices, and then we'll go to Windows devices. That's fine. And I'll pick this Windows device, and then across the top, I will have device diagnostics. Right here, collect diagnostics. That's what I hit. That's what I chose to collect the logs. And I've since downloaded the logs. And so let me go and look here on my device, and I should have them here, desktop. Device diagnostics. Here's the unzipped version, and this is what you'd expect to get whenever device diagnostics runs. You're going to get the inventory. So we haven't even talked about, I mentioned there's other logs besides the event log or event viewer and the IME logs that I showed you, right? There's a slew of logs. So if you're using the device inventory agent, here's logs. If you're using endpoint privilege manager, here's logs. If you're using, if you're trying to deploy programs, here's that. Here's your MDM diagnostics, and on logs for Windows Update. On we go, right? Here are the interesting, relevant registry keys that are available that you can take a look at depending on your needs. I'm going to show you a few in a minute, but notice there's a bunch of them. Here's some errors that are in the registry, and on we go, right? So this is a treasure trove if you need help diagnosing a problem, but it's also a fantastic education tool to know what's out there that you can tap into if you do get into a challenge where you need to be able to dig in, right? That's why I say there is no end of stuff that we can do on a Windows device. And I'm just running over the top ones here to kind of give you an idea, but there's lots and lots of different options. All right. So that was a bit of a jump ahead because I have diagnostics coming up here in a minute, but we've done that one so we can skip through it. One other thing. I'll show it to you now real quick. Hang on. Let me get over there. I have app deployment troubleshooting in another section, but since I'm here, I'll go ahead and do it. All right. So another thing while I'm in the console, and then I want to show you another couple of things as well. Mention again that there's so many options here. All right. So if I go to the Intune console and I'm on this machine, I'll look here. I don't think I have any, but we'll see. And I scroll down, I will see managed apps. So these are apps that I deployed to the machine. Okay, good. So I have a few here, right? So if I click on the app, it's going to show me kind of a flow chart of where things are. All right, application created, application assigned, device last check. It hasn't finished installing, right? Let me go to another device real quick. That should have something more than that. And go down to managed apps here. And I don't know, pick client bootstrap. So it says installed successfully. So we can see along the way app installation completed, right? So you can see if there's errors along the way that we detect, we will actually show you in this flowchart. The app logs and such can also augment with this. Here's another thing, right? So it's just helpful to let you see the flow of events when they happen and so forth. While I'm here, I will also point out just a couple of things that I don't have that I'm going to dig into on this discussion, but we have device query that will allow you to go out and check certain attributes of your machine that might be important for an install. So this is it's similar to CM Pivot in Configuration Manager. It's not exactly like CM Pivot in Config Manager. So that's one area. Remediations is another I'll point out. Being able to look at app configurations and device configurations, whatever, is more useful information, right? That's in the portal. Okay, so we did that, and then advanced diagnostics. This is a tool that you can run. Now, it takes a minute to kind of sift through it and to figure out what. Here we go. I need settings. Settings. There we go. Figure out what it gives you. But if you go to Accounts and Access Worker School, then you can go into Info again, and then scroll down. You'll get to Advanced Diagnostics Report. I'm going to create the report. I've already done it, so I'll just use what I have. But it's going to go into the user's public documents user profile. So let's go find that. So C colon users public documents, and here's our MDM diagnostics. So you can, you have this as a CAD file. You can see it as an HTML, and you can see different detail that's relevant about your device, right? And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can scroll through it yourself and kind of see what's going on with your device. Scroll all the way to the bottom. It's a big report, as you can tell. Scroll to the bottom, and then that's it, right? So just breaks it up into categories. A good thing to be able to look through and see possibly how things are configured and so on for your devices. Registry. So these are some interesting registry keys. Certainly not all of the registry keys that you might be interested to look at. So let's go pull open the registry editor again, and we'll walk through these. Yes, I want to open it, and no, I don't want to go back to where we were because that is declared config. Okay, so I'm not going to hit all of them, but I will hit some of them. All right, so if we go to local machine software, Microsoft enrollments with an S at the end, then this will be the detail about your enrollment. So there's a lot of information here, right? Not going to go through it all, but I'll show you one area, and that's this may not always be at the top, and I don't believe it's going to be the same GUID each time, but it will be buried down in here, right? And so this will help you diagnose enrollments. And for example, device enroller is something that will run and try to help enroll the device. You can see some detail about it and when it ran and so forth. The DM client, the first sync information, blah, 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 poll information, push information, whatever. This is great to view. Please do not change anything here, right? Don't edit the registry to change anything here, but it's good to be able to know what's going on. This particular registry key that I have highlighted, right? When you go back to the synchronization session that I mentioned earlier, I'll talk to you a little bit about one way that Windows devices sync much more frequently than what you might think, and that's through the Windows push notification service. And each platform has its own version of that, right? But this uses Windows push notification, and so we will renegotiate the URI fairly often, and we'll tell you the status, hey, it was successful, right? So if you have a device that doesn't show a success here other than 0, right? Or your firewalls don't allow out the URIs or endpoints that we need, then Intune will still work, but it will be substantially delayed getting configurations to your device compared to what you would experience if you have this turned on. I've never seen, maybe once, a customer who had problems with this, but it's something to be aware of and at least know about, right? Okay, now, and there's other stuff in here that I'm not going to dig into. You can, and I don't know why it starts to spin here, so hang on. Okay, that just froze. I wanted to close Registry Editor and restart it and not make you wait through all of that. All right, so lots of good information in here. Another one that's right next to this, right, is desktop app management. So this will be specific to MDM delivered things, and specifically here we see MSI, because that's really all that I've pushed to my machine. And I can go in and see details about MSI applications that are being pushed. I can also see in here, where is it? The content download URI, right? I can see the download location, which mine has been, this has been here forever and has persisted in my lab through a few things, so it's not accurate now. But this is very interesting information, because if you're doing an app deployment of something that's sizable, right? You want to know if that app deployment started, perhaps. And so you can come in here and see, oh, wait, at least we've communicated down and we know about it, right? And the download location, again, this one's kind of messed up. Let's see, here's one that will show the download location. So here is the path to where the downloads happen, right? So we bury it, but you might need to go in here and make sure that something's intact, whatever, right? We give you the information. This is for MDM stuff, right? MDM deployed stuff. Now, another one that is interesting is, and you see another one here, you might have seen the registry key for that. Here's EPM agent, that's endpoint privilege management. Another one that's interesting is policy manager. So if you want, let me go down, policy manager. Right, so I mentioned that you might want to spot check devices and see if configurations have actually arrived, even though it may not yet show up in the Intune portal. Most, with a big asterisk, most of the configurations that you will deploy from Intune will arrive in the policy manager registry key. There are exceptions, like, well, some Windows Update settings show up here too, but there are some things that will be not in this registry key. But for the most part, you can go in here and get a look at what's going on. So under Policy Manager, you have both the current config, the one that's on the machine today, and the default config. So those that are just there if you don't manage anything. So don't get confused in them. They'll look very similar, but they're very different as well. So if I have something that I've deployed to the device, it'll be under this key. To the user, it'll be under a key that looks like this. And so I can go through and see the settings, and like here's my Windows Update settings. Here's my security settings. Here's file system settings. Here's just a bunch of things. Here's BitLocker settings, browser settings, on and on, right? ADMX templates. Now, notice ADMX here compared to default. Default has a whole bunch more, right? Why? Because these are settings that are in place that I've not overridden, I've not introduced, I've not changed. So the default settings are in place, right? So again, you can spend time going through that. And it's very, very interesting to be able to see it. Okay, and then finally, I showed you the declarative configuration key. Another one to be aware of, and this gets away from MDM, is the Intune Management Extension registry key. So Intune Management Extension, Intune here, pop that open, and you can see some good detail about policies, about Win32 apps that have come down through here, right? Here's one, let's see, one subnode, different things, right? You can go through and see all sorts of information. Again, feel free to read it. And by the way, notice compliance state message. Hey, where does state message sound familiar? Config manager, right? So there are definitely some places that you'll see some config manager-esque kind of settings. So again, spend time at your leisure to go through some of these. They're there, nothing's hidden. Take a look, right? Now just a few examples that are beyond. So all of that is valid. And then there's more, right? If you're delivering certificates from Intune and you're using our integration with Microsoft PKI servers and such through the SCEP install, this doesn't apply to Cloud PKI, right? Then you have a combination of log files that you can leverage for that, right? There's SCEP-specific log files on your Indes servers that you can look at to tell you about certificate delivery in case things aren't working the way you think they should. There's ways to validate the flow and such. I'm not going to go into that, just to show you that on the certificate connector, it has its own event log. And here are the different event codes that could come up. Again, I'm just posting these out of the documentation so you can see, but that's an example, right? There's examples with Wi-Fi. Right, so maybe I care about an event 1506 because I'm looking for stuff in Wi-Fi. Well, I can go to the event logs. I say I can, there we go, and look in the admin section and then try to filter on an event 1509, which I may or may not have, and hone in on that event. I don't have any. That event in order to look at your Wi-Fi profiles and see what's going on with them, right? So that's, again, coming back to the event log for that. Now, there's also, BitLocker. So for BitLocker, we have the standard MDM log file. And for that, we can look at, let's just see. I'll search for BitLocker. Let me just try to find BitLocker. That's not what I wanted to do. Device diagnostics here. Admin. Let's try to do it again. BitLocker. It's not going to find it. Let me remove my filter. Cancel filter current log. No, I don't want to anymore. Let's see. I'll maybe try I'll just do the filter again. So find BitLocker, find next. Right, so there's an event related to BitLocker. So you can go search the event that way. Again, not going to dig into it too much, but there's a source for that. There's also the BitLocker API. So if I go up, BitLocker has its own log, right? A couple of those. So lots of good information there. There's tons you will learn from this if you're trying to manage BitLocker with Intune. That's there. There's also the BitLocker registry. So I'm not going to pop that back up, but it's out there if you need to look in the registry and see detail about it. I talked about applications already, the MDM application, the Win32 applications for troubleshooting those, right? And we could go on and on because there's lots of detail that I've not even gotten to yet. So let's end where we began. Why did we do the session? Because very often people will look at Intune, especially after they're new to it, and think, well, how do you troubleshoot this thing? And the answer is you can absolutely troubleshoot Intune, right? What you cannot troubleshoot is the server backend because that's in the cloud. It's managed by Microsoft. But you can absolutely troubleshoot the effect on the client, right? And that's why I wanted to go through this list of things to give you a flavor of what's at your fingertips to be able to do the troubleshooting and hopefully help you get comfortable with the options for troubleshooting do abound. And there's more than we talked about here, right? So with that, we'll leave you with that, and we'll have another session on devices coming up. So until then, see you later.